Echoes from the silent mint. It began with a sound so faint most never heard it. A shift in metal, a change in weight, a whisper of value being rewritten in the shadows. Yet from that whisper came a wave that would sweep across borders and redraw the financial loyalties of Europe. To understand how a quiet mint became the center of a continental storm, we need to return to a time when currency was not just a tool of trade but a declaration of sovereignty. Every coin carried a ruler's promise. Every seal was a pledge of stability. But as kingdoms grappled with war, scarcity, and ambition, those promises strained under pressure. And in that tension, opportunists found room to maneuver, bending the meaning of money until it served purposes far beyond commerce. The first reveal takes us inside the mint itself, a place known for precision yet burdened by secrecy. Workers noticed subtle changes, alloys altered without explanation, weights adjusted ever so slightly, and new dyes introduced under orders that came from no familiar authority. At first, they dismissed the anomalies as temporary measures, perhaps an attempt to stretch limited resources. But soon it became clear the mint was producing two currencies at once. One official, sanctioned by the crown. The other, identical in appearance but infused with a cheaper core. Next came the second beat. Merchants who handled the new coins noticed they tarnished faster, felt lighter, carried a resonance that seemed off by the smallest measure. In distant markets, buyers began demanding higher quantities for the same price, suspecting debasement even if they could not prove it. Confidence, the invisible spine of every economy, began to bend. Yet the mint's overseers stayed silent, convinced that as long as the coins looked legitimate, belief would hold. But belief is fragile, especially when measured in metal. The shift in trust traveled faster than the coins themselves. Traders whispered that a great deception was underway. Cities tightened their acceptance standards. Rival states sent emissaries to inspect the mint, though few were granted access. Beneath the calm surface of daily trade, a fracture was forming, one that would soon threaten alliances built over generations. And behind it all, the silent mint continued its work, unaware that the smallest changes had already set Europe on a path toward confrontation. The altered coins spread through markets faster than officials anticipated. At first, the changes were subtle enough to escape formal notice. A merchant adjusted prices slightly. A guildmaster hesitated before accepting payment. A caravan leader demanded inspection before sealing a deal. Each reaction was small, almost forgettable. Yet together, they marked the moment Europe began to sense that something was wrong. As the reveal deepened, scholars and money changers undertook quiet tests of their own. They shaved edges, compared densities, heated samples over low flames. The results were consistent and troubling. The new coins carried less precious metal than their predecessors. The difference was slight but undeniable. Confidence, once a steady river, now twisted into uncertainty. Some claimed the debasement was sanctioned by the crown. Others insisted it was the work of rogue officials. No one held proof, but everyone felt the consequences. Markets began to move with an unfamiliar jitter. Regions that relied heavily on trade felt the pressure first. Grain sellers demanded payment in older coinage. Textile merchants refused to accept certain mints altogether. Foreign traders, wary of entanglement, raised tariffs on goods purchased with the suspect currency. The economy, once fluid, now dragged under the weight of doubt. Inside the mint, the conflict took its earliest shape. A group of master engravers confronted the overseers, demanding an explanation for the new alloy ratios. They cited tradition, law, and the sacred duty of minting. Their concerns were dismissed with practiced ease. The overseers claimed higher directives required adjustments, though no document was shown. Those who pushed further were reassigned, silenced, or quietly dismissed. Skilled hands that had shaped coins for decades were suddenly replaced by workers who asked fewer questions. The manipulation spread beyond the mint's walls. Ministers in distant courts debated whether the debasement was a strategic move or a desperate one. Some believed the crown sought to fund expanding ambitions without raising taxes. Others feared that the kingdom's reserves had dwindled to dangerous levels, leaving debasement as the only escape. Whichever theory was true, both implied instability, and instability invited rivals to probe for weakness. Tension escalated when the first major port city formally rejected the new coinage. Officials claimed it failed their tests for purity. Traders applauded the decision, seeing it as a defense of honest commerce. But the crown interpreted it as an act of rebellion. In that single moment, a dispute over metal transformed into a battle for authority. The fracture was no longer confined to markets or mint rooms. It had reached courtrooms, council halls, and border crossings. And with every passing day, the silent mint's secret became a louder threat to Europe's fragile balance. What began as a quiet disturbance now grew into open conflict. The crown, determined to reassert control, issued decrees declaring all coins old or new equally valid. But edicts could not repair damaged trust. Merchants continued testing currency in secret. Guilds circulated warnings. Foreign traders tightened restrictions, wary of accepting payment that might lose value before they reached home soil. With every refusal, the kingdom's authority weakened, and the mint's secret rose closer to the surface. The first major confrontation erupted in the capital's central market. Inspectors arrived to enforce the crown's decree, demanding that merchants accept the disputed coins without question. Their presence, stern and uncompromising, clashed with a crowd already simmering with frustration. A goldsmith openly challenged the order, producing scales and samples to demonstrate the discrepancy in purity. When an inspector seized his tools, the crowd erupted. Shouts filled the square, not just about coins but about trust, fairness, and the right to question power. News of the clash spread across the realm. In ports, villages, and border towns, people asked the same question: if the crown had allowed the coinage to weaken, what else had it neglected? Doubt evolved into defiance. Officials found themselves confronted not by isolated complaints, but by organized refusals. Whole districts declared they would accept only older coins or foreign currencies known for stability. This shift undermined the kingdom's financial foundation more effectively than any rival could have planned. Inside the mint, tension thickened. Workers feared becoming scapegoats for decisions made far above their rank. Some whispered of escape, seeking safer employment in neighboring states. Others secretly recorded alloy measurements, hoping to protect themselves if an inquiry arrived. The overseers, cornered by growing scrutiny, tightened discipline to an oppressive degree. Every action was monitored. Every word weighed. The atmosphere, once defined by precision, now pulsed with fear. Beyond the kingdom, rival states observed the unfolding crisis with sharp interest. Diplomats traveled quietly, gathering intelligence on whether the mint's debasement reflected desperation or strategy. Generals measured military supply costs in increasingly unstable coin. Councils debated whether the turmoil presented an opportunity to pressure borders, renegotiate treaties, or reshape the region's balance of power. The buildup intensified when an unmarked shipment of raw silver was intercepted near the frontier. Documents inside suggested the crown sought emergency resources to restore the coin's purity. The discovery confirmed what many suspected: the kingdom's reserves had dwindled to alarming levels. Its reputation, once firm, now trembled on the edge of collapse. Across Europe, markets reacted violently. Prices soared, contracts dissolved, and exchanges that had run smoothly for generations found themselves choked by confusion. Every trader, banker, and ruler knew the truth: a currency crisis in one realm rarely stayed contained. It spread, infecting neighbors, allies, and rivals alike. The tension had reached its peak. With trust fractured, authority challenged, and regional stability shaken, all of Europe waited for a single event that would determine whether order could be restored or whether the silent mint's secret would ignite a financial storm none could control. The decisive moment arrived when the crown summoned representatives from every major guild, council, and port authority to a rare emergency assembly. Officials expected compliance. What they received was revolt. One by one, leaders stepped forward, presenting evidence gathered from months of quiet testing. Scales, filings, purity samples, every piece revealed the same truth: the kingdom's own mint had weakened its currency, endangering all who relied on it. The chamber fell silent as the weight of the accusation settled over the royal advisors. The crown attempted to defend itself, claiming necessity, strategy, even patriotism. But the arguments dissolved under the certainty of physical proof. The kingdom's most trusted institutions had been compromised, and no decree could rebuild confidence overnight. In that moment, the illusion of control shattered. Guild masters refused to back down. Port officials declared independence in monetary matters. Rural councils demanded restitution for lost value. The mint's secret was no longer silent, it echoed through every sector of society. The climax unfolded as word of the assembly spread. Markets reacted with sudden clarity. Traders rushed to convert the weakened coin into foreign metals. Neighboring states closed their borders to shipments from the kingdom. Caravans rerouted overnight, bypassing roads long considered essential. Within days, the realm's once reliable currency became a burden, accepted only with hesitation or heavy discount. The crisis had reached its zenith, and the consequences could no longer be contained. But in the aftermath came the turning point. Recognizing the danger of allowing the crisis to escalate further, the crown agreed to a drastic reform. The mint was placed under independent oversight. New coins were issued with verified purity, each struck with a mark denoting transparency. Guilds and councils gained a voice in economic governance, ensuring that no single authority could alter the currency's integrity again. Slowly, trust began to rebuild, not through decree, but through accountability. The lesson endures far beyond this moment in history. Currency is more than metal or ink. It is a shared belief, fragile and powerful, sustained by honesty and eroded by secrecy. When that belief falters, nations tremble. When restored, societies find their footing once more. Sometimes the smallest shift in perspective becomes the beginning of a new future.